Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of In Conversation with Harvey. With me today is Ayanda, my former guest, and we're going to be discussing the topic that revolves around self-awareness and healing. Something a bit more wholesome to our other topics, but nonetheless just as important. Now, as we dive in, myself and Ayanda have spoken at great length in our own personal friendship about self-awareness and healing through a lot of the situations that we've been in our own personal lives. But I thought it best to just bring it onto the show, see what your views and opinions are. So feel free to also engage with us, comment, and share some of your opinions on this conversation and this topic. I believe that as 20-somethings, there's a lot of work that we need to do to get to a place of healing, such that we don't pass on traumas to our children, if we decide to have any, and that we also become better versions of ourselves. So thank you for joining me today, Ayanda.
Thank you for having me again.
Wow. I think we've spoken about this prior, right?
Yeah.
So what is self-awareness for you?
Self-awareness for me is digging deeper
Right.
in myself and learning and unlearning patterns that I might have learned during survival or like
Right.
traumatic experiences or even just happy moments, just knowing
Right.
yourself. Yeah.
Okay. My understanding of self-awareness is, I think it's almost self-explanatory in the term. It's the awareness of self, your awareness of your presence in the world, and not just your presence that has been shaped by the past, but also the present, what's happening currently. Are you able to be here? Are you self-aware enough to be aware of the current environment?
Absolutely.
Now, we all go through different trials and the different stages in our own lives, but I know that you have gone through a series of traumatic events as well. I need to learn from you. How did you cope with certain pains and struggles that you had in life?
Before self-awareness or just
I
in
want to
general?
know both, before your self-awareness
Okay.
and after.
Before self-awareness, I would just shut down.
Right. So that was a coping mechanism?
Yeah, shut down, hide,
Right.
not talk to anyone, not even know how to articulate how I'm feeling,
Right.
and then just be closed off to everyone in the world.
Is there a particular instance that you can describe for me where something happened and you went recluse?
Yeah, well, there's loads for for the
Yeah.
very first time I experienced death as a child,
Right.
I didn't know what that was. Because that was really, really traumatic for me. I didn't know who to talk to. Because like when somebody dies, people come, they come to console you. But the actual when you feel is when everyone is gone.
Right.
And you actually have to face like, okay, the person that I've been living with since I was a child is gone. So
Right.
what does that mean for me? So obviously I was closed down. I was not talking to anybody. I was acting up in school. My grades dropped because of that.
Right.
And I was just really like a problem child. But that was because that was my way of acting out.
Right.
So it's not a healthy way of acting out. I was just...
But it was one outlet.
It was an
Right.
outlet. Yeah, it's definitely helped me, obviously. In school, like I would be like that kid. Yeah, Yanda's here, yeah. But when
Yeah.
you're home, you're very grumpy, you're very sad.
Right.
So I learned a lot of masking.
Also, you could hide the
Yeah,
pain.
I'm very good at masking.
Okay.
No, that's not something to be proud
It's
of.
not something to be proud
But I
of,
learned
yeah.
the art of masking, like, dual personalities. Like when you're with your friends, you're like this bubbly
And at
person.
that age as well.
Yeah, you're very young, but you are able to like switch on a personality and then switch off when you
Right.
get home. Because when you're home now, you have to face the actual pain. So
Right.
now I've learned not to do that.
Not to do
Yeah.
that. I'd say, just to relate to some of what you said there, so I had a death in my family, I think maybe 7 years ago. And it was someone who I had known all my life, someone who had practically raised me. And so it was the first death of someone that I actively knew, someone
Yeah.
who was always there. Usually you hear of people dying and you think, oh, it's so-and-so's
Yeah.
brother from another mother and this and that.
It's
So
very
it's
far.
never anyone who's
Yeah.
like directly in your vicinity. So when it did happen, I remember getting into the state of shock. I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't know how I could process it. My initial response was anger at the time. And a lot of scars have happened throughout as well, because leading up to this death, there was a lot of tension as well. So a lot of things were unsaid. A lot of things
that's the worst.
Yeah, it's the worst, right? A lot of things were pending with this person. And I didn't know, because here I was this 15-year-old kid dealing with the death of someone very important and significant in their life. And these are my more impressionable years. You're 15. Your mind can be shaped in whichever direction at that point. And the way in which other people handled that situation as well also affected my relationship with them currently as well. So now it became a sore point. Where
I definitely understand where you're coming from when you say
it's a sore point, right? That you
Yeah.
carry on even way into your adulthood. Now we're in our 20-somethings and we're looking back and it's still as fresh as yesterday, right? Because there's this pain, it's lingering, it's a trauma, and there's so many trauma responses and coping mechanisms that we've had throughout. But I want to understand, beyond just acting out, I think, pain, I believe that is a continuous journey to... I can't say that you just stop feeling the pain. I'd say you learn how to live in spite of the pain. What are some of the coping mechanisms that you've taken into your adulthood, whether they are positive or negative?
Coping mechanisms?
Yeah.
Because that was the very first, like you mentioned, that was the very first death. That
Right.
in the next 3 years, that was like another person dies.
Another one.
So I learned to be numb.
Okay.
To not process anything, which is really, really bad, because you hold things in, you don't want to face them. The good thing that I learned was I know when to leave. I don't know if that makes sense, but like when you grow up with like being sheltered and the person that's been sheltering you is gone and you're around people that they don't treat you as good, you know who's right for you and who's not.
So you learn to
leave. I had to move like as a child, which was really traumatic as well, because you're moving from this person's home and they have their own way of living.
Right.
So you know when you're wanted in a place. So as now I'm grown, I know now, like
you can pick up.
I can pick up on energies. I know when I'm not needed somewhere, so I know when to leave.
Right.
Like I don't know if that's a good thing, but for me at least I take it as a good thing, because I know when it's my time to leave or when I'm not wanted, and I work my way to leave a certain place.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anything that you are working on that's perhaps not as positive?
Yeah, abandonment issues.
Oh.
I always leave the man that I'm dating because I always assume they're going to leave first.
They're going to leave anyway. And this is as a result of that death.
Yeah. So I always make sure that I leave. Even if I sense a little red flag, I'm like, I'm gone.
Because they're very disposable to you, men.
Not responsible, because I'm so afraid of rejection.
Right.
So if I have any control over not feeling rejected, I'll make sure I'll never feel rejected. Right. So I'll always leave before somebody could leave me, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
But
and that's what I'm working on now, because I've let go of people that were probably potentially going to be good people.
But because of that, it was a hindering point. I would say I could relate to some of what you're saying as well, because I've had instances where people that left before I even came into the picture then came back into my life, and they were total strangers, and I was sort of expected to just go along to get along just because this person is a family member and I don't know them, they're a stranger, and so it was very difficult to build bonds as well. So that encompasses some of the traumas that I've experienced.
So you feel like you're adapting.
Exactly. So it's not only the death, but then it's also these are the different elements of like people you don't know coming back into your life and being expected to act as if everything is okay when it's not.
It's not.
Or it could be some traumas that you experience about perhaps what people say about you, and maybe the way they have made you view yourself, body image issues, all these sorts of different issues that become pressures in our adult lives. I mean, here we are in our 20-somethings. There's no way we can say that we are all mentally okay. No. Mental health and mental wellness is something that must be prioritized. And also, we need to recognize that there are different pressures that people carry in society, right? We all have different backgrounds. Some people are coming from not so stable households. Some people are coming from painful upbringings. Some people have trauma. They were raised in abuse.
That's so true.
In all different elements of abuse. So this level of self-awareness and healing that we're discussing, can you say that there is, because I've seen people preach this is how you deal with it and then that's it. But then it's not a one solution fits all, right? What would be your take on that?
Whenever I talk to family members about people that have hurt me when I was a kid, I was
Right.
always told, forgive them.
Right.
Just have that relationship with them.
Yeah.
I would tell anyone who has been through something similar or have had, sometimes it's okay to cancel family members.
Yeah.
Especially if they hurt you and they were an adult and you're a kid, whether that was verbally, physically, or emotionally. If somebody is really, really hurtful to you, it does not matter if they're blood, they have to go.
Right.
Because just because somebody is your family member does not mean they're not toxic.
Right.
And that does not mean that you have to continue being in their life.
In their life.
Yeah, like,
Which
let
I
them go.
entirely understand.
Let them go. I know
Yeah.
it's blood, but sometimes, yes, some people have to be let go.
For your sake as well.
For me as well, I've learned that once I've let those people go, even though they were older, I still have respect for them.
Right.
I don't shout at them, but they're gone, and my life has been so much peaceful without them.
You know, in African cultures, the
Yes.
whole mentality is that if you're young, you respect your elders, and no matter what, you still respect them, right? So I've seen situations where some of my peers have been made to respect their abusers, right? Where essentially the household, it could be the aunt, the uncle, the mom, the dad, whoever.
Usually the breadwinner.
Usually the breadwinner in many instances is very abusive towards them, whether it's physically, whether it's emotionally, whatever the case. And they've just, even in moments where they speak out, they've been expected, oh, just forgive, oh, you know, just respect, that's your elder, don't talk about them like that.
No.
When in essence, it then takes your voice away as a young adult. You know,
What does that teach you?
Exactly. It takes away your, like I've seen many young girls go through this as well, you know, where they are in situations where there's like molestation happens. And when they speak up, they are the ones who are then
Trigger
blamed.
warning for anyone watching this. by the
Yeah,
way.
trigger warning. When they are then blamed for these things, it's like, oh, what were you wearing? Why were you doing? But then it's like, if you're bringing adult people into your household, right? And then you have to tell your little girl to go and get changed just because these men came into the house. The problem is not on the child, it's on these men and their perception of the child, because there's nothing in that moment about this child that is sexual. But I've seen instances like that. I've known instances like
Or
that.
you're told to go apologize
And
to
you,
the person
exactly,
for
to your
causing
abuser.
drama. You coming forward and telling somebody that somebody made me feel uncomfortable, and then now you are in a position where you have to go and apologize to somebody who has inappropriately touched you. It does not make sense, and I think a lot of aunties, African moms are really failing these young girls.
But I can't say it's, in as much as, yes, it's more prevalent in African cultures, like where it's sort of expected that you're forgiving, you're understanding, and you don't view it like it's a bad thing. It exists globally. Like here, I've seen, you know, in Irish homes, these type of things happen and have children not be believed.
So is it a generational thing then? Where
it is probably.
These women are kind of like used to that behavior, so they don't know how to deal with young girls when they come saying that to them. Because when I realized, like when one uncle made me feel uncomfortable, he didn't do anything to me, but I always felt very uncomfortable with him. When he hugged me, the hugs were a bit longer. You know, those type of stuff.
There
like,
were things that
it's
would
not
happen,
like active, but it's signs, like it's feeling, like you feel it. And I went to one of the aunts and I told her, she was just like, that's how he is.
Right.
But then later on, I realized, this aunt was actually, she went through the same thing when she was my age.
And so to her, it's normal.
So she's never dealt with it.
Okay.
So how can she be able to deal with my stuff when she's never
dealt with her own?
Her own. So
as well.
Maybe we have to also keep in mind, like these, when we're blaming African, I'm not putting an excuse for that. I'm just saying, probably they have not even healed from their trauma. So to come to somebody who's unhealed and asking them for help, sometimes it's no use.
Right.
I'd rather even go to you than go to
them.
Because you're probably more, self-aware. The older generation is not self-aware. Most of them are not self-aware, especially in my family.
Right.
Like they wouldn't know how to deal with certain things. It's only right now when they've learned like, there's mental health because of the kids that they're having, they're more aware. So they're forcing them to wake up. Right. You know what I mean? But before, like I could never talk about mental health with like aunties and stuff. They would think like, let's just pray for you.
But then
and hope for the best.
I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because when you talk about self-awareness and healing, and you talk about mental well-being and mental wellness, there's a big part of our society, wherever you are in the world, that believes that religion and prayer is the answer for this very prevalent thing, this very painful thing that's happening. And it's so complex. There's no one solution that will fit all our different problems. So to say to someone, pray your problems away, or we're going to pray for you and you're going to be fine, it's not enough. People need to get help. People, when they speak out, need to be heard.
Yes.
And
don't demonize
exactly
them.
Don't demonize them, right? Because I come from a background where I'd say, like you said, the older generation of the people in my family, there was a point, even when you discuss about certain issues like, oh, I'm feeling depressed. Oof. To them, that term depression, they would say, oh, but that's a very Western thing. We don't do that here. And then you understand, but depression has nothing to do with where you're
confuse depression with stress.
With stress, you know what I mean? They're like, oh, you're just stressed.
Just take a nap.
Or like, oh, depression is a very Western thing. We don't do that here. No, but it's a real thing, and it's affected many people. And I know that I have been in positions like that where I was not mentally okay, and I did speak out and I was not heard. Had it not been for very specific people who were in my age group who could understand that this was a real issue, I probably would not be here. And it's the same as the case for a lot of different people as well.
And that's the thing, and I thank social media for stuff like that.
For exposing you.
For exposing me to stuff like that. Like, oh, I'm not the only one that feels like that. Oh, the reason why I feel like I have to always leave is because of this. I wouldn't have known this without like researching about it. That's a good thing about internet and like people coming forward and talking about these conversations, because there's somebody out there who's going to watch this and be like, oh, this is why I feel like this. Because sometimes you just accept things for what they are. You feel like, oh, maybe I don't know how to be in a relationship. No, you have to learn why you can't be with someone. You have to learn why you have to leave all the time. There's a reason why we do certain things. And
even like, outside the context of just romantic relationships. If I came in that
situation with people in my family, they were like, you can't keep a man.
And the fact that they just say that randomly.
Like, she can't keep a man. But no, like there's a reason why you can't keep people in your life, you know? And it's up to you to be able to like go and do the work within yourself and be like, okay, what am I doing wrong? Yes, that guy was bad and all that, but there's also something maybe I could have contributed to that. Some guys, yes, leave them, but I'm saying, but there's some people that you might have left that it was more of you projecting more than it's actually like an issue. I think initially when we started the show, one of the things I said was I believe that the work of our lives is to connect more deeply with ourselves and to those around us, such that we learn from each other and we grow. And as part of this self-awareness and health conversation and healing conversation, it's not just about the traumas that we've experienced. I also want us to talk about the healing, what we're doing to sort of heal. And bear in mind, healing processes are not things that you do overnight. It's not a 2-week solution. It's not a 6-month diet. Healing is a continuous, lifelong journey. And even till the very end, you might still be healing scars from as young as 5 years old. What has your healing journey looked like? Healing journey? It's looking like just accepting who you are. And when I say that, I don't mean that in like a fairyland. Like actually accepting, like, okay, this is me. This is the body that I'm probably going to be with for the rest of my life. For the rest
of your life,
this is the skin that I have. I was born into this family. Just accepting that and owning up to that. Because when you don't accept certain things, you end up mimicking people. You don't know your place in the world. It's very important to know yourself so that wherever you are, I stand in any room and be like, okay, this is Ayanda. You know what I mean? When I go into job interviews, when I'm in work, I know this is who I am. I can work on certain things and that, but I've actually accepted myself before that was not the case.
Which is I'd say that's a commendable way of looking at it. I remember reading a book, I'm not too sure of the title now, but then in this book, there was a particular quote that I picked up. And this quote said that if you went back in time, and if you erased all the mistakes that you made or all the pain that you went through, you would essentially erase yourself, because all of that formed who you see today, right? And I hadn't thought about that because I was like, okay, that pain, it was not necessary. No pain is necessary, really, but it molded the person that people see here today. So that's a very intricate part of who you are, essentially. And as much as we wish that we could go back and fix what went wrong and maybe go to that point where we stop blaming ourselves as well for what went wrong. I think we
a lot of blaming.
Yeah, a lot of blaming, a lot of self-blaming, believing that I could have done better. Life panned out.
But also, it's not about I could have done better. The other thing I've always started telling myself is that there was no way I could have done better because I've never experienced it before. Like, how was I able to deal with death? That was the only way that I knew how to deal with it.
It was when it actually came
that was
and stared you in
all
the
the skills
face.
that I had. I forgive myself for everything that I've ever done for survival.
Right.
That was my way of surviving at the point, like shutting people down, acting out. Because if you keep beating yourself up, I'll be like, I could have done this better, but that's already gone. Like, that's already gone. You can only evaluate what you're going to do in the future. What you've done, like, before, you're not going to be able to go and change that. So stop beating yourself about that. Now, you know that we're having that conversation. We're self-aware, which is the point of all that. It's good that you're having that conversation because some people don't even know that they're doing things. They don't even know that there's a pattern.
They don't see the pattern.
So for you to actually see like, oh, I have a pattern here.
Right.
I attract certain people in my life. What is that? Already, without even doing any work, that's good because you've actually seen, oh, you're now actually aware of what you're doing. Right. And that's also great.
Yeah, I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
It takes me back to, there was a video that I saw from one of the women I aspire to be like in my life. Her name is Bonang Mateva. You know her from South Africa. Brilliant, phenomenal, talented woman. And she said, you need to be careful of lies. You need to be careful of the lies that people tell you, but also be very careful of the lies that you tell yourself. So it's not only until you're as honest with yourself that you actually start making progress towards healing or towards that level of self-awareness where you're actually righting the wrongs and being accountable. Because if I tell you that here's a situation and this is what you should do to fix it, if you don't see that you are wrong in that moment and that there's something that I'm trying to help you with, I can't take it any further. You can take the donkey to the well, but you can't force it to drink. Which is essentially that same concept, right? People have to become, we all have to become accountable to ourselves and be as deeply honest with ourselves as we can, such that we get to a point where we are aware when we are sort of BSing ourselves, lying to yourself, saying, I'm okay, when you're not. If you're actually not okay, you're not okay. And it's okay to not be okay. Speak it out, voice it out. There are multiple platforms out there. There are many people out there who are more than happy and more than capable and qualified to help you and assist you in your journey. You don't have to go through anything alone at any point. And trying to get to a level of self-awareness and healing, that takes a lot. And even admitting that you need to become more self-aware, admitting that you need to become more healed in your own life, it takes a lot to admit it. It takes
understanding what self-awareness
exactly.
is as well.
It does take a lot. I mean, in my own personal life, when it comes to the healing aspect of it, traumas aside, the healing aspect of it, in as much as I wish I had the apologies, and as much as I wish people came and said, I am sorry. I have to accept the apologies that didn't come.
Sometimes you have to say sorry to yourself on their behalf.
Exactly. I have to accept the apologies that never came. And I have to hold myself accountable to actually start doing the work of healing. Like I said, healing is a continuous process and it comes in many different forms. However, getting there, I don't think it's a destination. Yeah. It's a journey.
There's always a journey.
There's always a journey, yeah.
The thing with self-awareness, I can never say I'm self-aware to the point where I don't need any help.
Right.
It's a constant cycle. Every single day I'm trying. Take each day one day at a time. Don't feel like it's pressure. Also pressuring yourself is also unhealthy. So take one day at a time. Deal with something. You can only do maybe one step to one thing. You don't have to be the most self-aware person in the world. We're all learning. We're all growing. So just be so graceful with yourself and be kind to yourself. And somebody once said to me, talk to yourself like how you would talk to your younger self. And that literally changed everything for me. Wow. Because when you do a lot of self-hate talk, I catch myself now saying, why are you saying that about yourself?
Yeah.
Because I realize of all the people in my life that have insulted me, treated me wrong, I'm the one that's been the most hurtful to myself.
And you tend to believe the things you tell yourself.
You believe yourself. Because nobody ever came to me and said certain things to me. These are only ideas that I had in my head. And then I made them a reality because I believed them because I was doing a lot of self-hate talk.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now digging yourself out of those trenches, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, you have to catch yourself like, no, don't say you're stupid.
No, even as a joke,
Yeah.
like it's not true.
Because you learn those things and you accept them about yourself. And then now you're like, oh, I'm stupid, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then you're like, oh, everybody hates me. Who told you everybody hates
told you
You're
that?
the one who said that about yourself.
And so you start to believe these
Yeah,
things.
you start believing
Yeah.
that, and that's not okay.
Would you have you been to therapy? Would you go to therapy?
I've been to therapy only when I was a kid because,
Right.
I was a mess.
Right.
They had to take me to therapy. It wasn't like anything traumatic, but I was not speaking to anyone, like I said. So they were like, she's not speaking to anyone, so let's try to bring her to someone.
To a therapist, yeah.
Everything else after that has been self-therapy.
Would you go to therapy now, looking at, because you're in your 20-somethings, and
I would go to therapy about other things, like maybe sexuality and stuff like that,
Right.
or just like other things, but I wouldn't go to therapy because of like other things. I think I know how to
there
deal
are
with
certain issues that you've overcome,
Yeah,
and
I've overcome
all of that.
But I
Yeah.
think I would go to therapy for relationships, including another person, not for me though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But should you need anyone to talk to, you know I'm always there for you, girl. You know I'm always there.
I'll
Can
be
call me
calling you for 6
anytime.
hours.
Like, listen, we have multiple 6-hour conversations.
Every
We talk
guy
about
that I've ever
any
liked, you know
and
so much
everything.
about them. Too much.
I know too much. I know too much.
Yeah.
But needless to say, you can always pick up the phone, you can always call me, you can always chat, you know, and if you need
Thank
to
you
get
for that.
anything out, please do share. And
That's a good friend right there.
please. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us
Yeah.
today for In Conversation with Harvey. Today's conversation has revolved primarily around somewhat a wholesome topic, a topic that affects a lot of people's lives. When you talk about self-awareness and healing from all different traumas that we experience and face in our lifetimes, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of maturity for one to be able to admit to themselves that they do need help, that they do need to speak up, and they do need to reach out to someone. You do not go through anything alone in this world. No one is an island. If you need help, reach out. It could be your friend, it could be your teachers, it could be your lecturers. There are multiple platforms out there which will be listed down below in the description where you can reach out and have people, professionals, actually talk you through some of the traumas and experiences that you're having. But from myself and the team here at In Conversation with House of Bakar, good night.